Hey, welcome back to Backyard Professor Chess videos. There's nothing like a nice warm fire on a winter day to warm you up in the outside, isn't it? Hey, before I get started on this fabulous game I've got to show you today, I want to mention a book I've been reading. It's by Tara Westover. It's called Educated. It's by Random House. The wind shifted. It's killing me, man. The smoke's killing me. Anyway, it's a brand new book, 2018. You ought to read it. It is sincerely awesome. It's based on her true story and her life experiences. Very excellent. So anyway, I'm going to enjoy this fire as long as the stupid wind doesn't shift. And it might. And then I'll get on with my chess video games. I've got some fabulous games for you. You're going to love these. Thank you for all the Merry Christmas wishes. I had a great holiday. I hope every one of you did too. Hey, while I'm at it, let me show you my metalwork I did on my hat. This is kind of cool. I actually made that copper leaf, and then I made the headband. I can't remember what they call this. Dang it, I wish I could. But I did all the beadwork on all the fancy little copper little cool deals to hang around. Then I've got the turquoise and the beads. And then I made the chain and all that jazz. So it's kind of a cool little hat. It's a cool little hat band on a real dorky backyard professor who's wanting to make chess videos and be a cowboy and live in the outdoors with his outdoor fireplace. Woohoo! Anyway, here come the chess games. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Won't you be my neighbor? I can do Mr. Rogers' idea, right? Take off my hat and say, welcome to my chess videos, neighbor. Wouldn't you like to see a happy little chess game from a happy little backyard professor showing you an incredibly happy little ending to an interesting chess game? I thought so. Well, I just happen to be in the market of doing something like that. I'll look like a doofus with the hat ring, but oh well, I'll come in from the cold in the fireplace in the backyard. And, gotta chew my eyes, I have a game from Arthur W. Dake. Now this guy is little known. He was in the 1930s. He was a sailor from Oregon, and he went to the Manhattan Chess Club in New York, and of course everybody showed him disdain until he started beating the pants off of absolutely everybody. At one time, he became the champion of both the Marshall and the Manhattan Chess Clubs, considered in the 1930s to be the strongest chess clubs in the world. He was at least as strong as Kashdan. Okay? However, he did meet our hero, Alexander Alekhine, over the board. And I want to show you this game because it is so instructive. Now, I'm getting this game out of Reuben Fine's book, The World's Great Chess Games. And in this one, Dake plays white, and Alekhine is the black pieces. His favorite color to play is chess as a chessman. So, let's see what happens when the clash of giants occur. Pawn queen 3, pawn queen 4, pawn queen 4. Alekine's not letting him get away with any beef whatsoever. He is immediately hitting his center and saying, now you're playing real chess, kiddo. So let's see what happens. Alekhine wants to... This was when Alekhine in the 1930s was at the peak of his powers. And so he's going to show this gentleman a little bit of information about chess, and in the process we get absolutely one of the coolest instructive games I've ever seen. So, knight to queen bishop 3. Dake is doing really good at this point. Knight to bishop 3, and then knight to bishop 3. Everybody's got their knights out, right? This is the Carl Kahn defense. And now bishop to king 3. In the 30s, well, I mean, generally from the 1880s on through past World War II, I suppose, probably when we got into Botvinnik's era, and I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this, the idea with the openings was to first develop knights before bishops, and that's usually what we see. But now they're to the point where they're bringing out their bishops, and they really do bring out their bishops. Dake pushes the pawn. Okay, so now, now Alekhine can begin developing his fianchetto bishop because of that pawn push. So we can see right now, neither side is technically cramped. Dake does have more space on the queen side because of his pawns, and so Alekhine's going to try to bring up his king side. He wants space so that they can maneuver and do better chess. And Dake puts that famous pin of the knight onto the king. And as we've said before, the purpose of this move is to help strengthen these squares. Right? They're being contested by both knights. They're being contested by the pawn. It appears like Dake has this square pretty much under control more than Alekhine does at this point. It's early in the game. But even though he is contesting that square with his knight, now Dake comes up with the knight pin to weaken Alekhine's hold on the center. That's how that works. This is good information to know. Well, he goes ahead and first fianchettos his bishop. It's important, if you're going to push either the G or the B pawn on either color, fianchetto the bishop. There are games where they don't get the bishop fianchettoed for like 8 or 9 plays, 8 or 9 moves, and they get crushed. If you're going to open with the fianchetto, get it there. Yeah? Because, look, it's hitting through this center onto this square. So again, we see the entire strategy of the pins, of the tactics of the pins, the strategy of arguing for squares. We see that being played out very strongly in this game. And that's usually the case with the Grandmaster games. And that is why Dake wanted that square contested, because that makes a fabulous outpost for your knight, doesn't it? Really seriously. Remember this for our games. Man, that outpost is really good. And you notice neither one are castled yet. So are we beginning to see a kingside attack come up? I don't know. We'll look. We shall watch. That's the idea. Queen comes to bishop 1. And queen comes over here to rook 4, giving her bishop some power toward the king. Alekhine better start thinking about castling here pretty cockeyed quick. Bishop comes back to queen 2. Now he's undone the pin here because Dake emphasized this diagonal. It's really important to make sure you don't give him that. That's a lot of power. And now Dake castles. And Alekhine says, aha, good idea. I believe I will castle. And so we've got them both castled now. So, the interesting thing at this juncture in the game is white certainly controls more of the board than black. So, for the opening salvos, Dake is holding his own. Right? Watch how Alekhine handles this. This is really interesting. Bishop, king, bishop, 4. Oh, no. Dake. Bishop, king. Boy, get the ones right, you clown. Bishop, king, bishop, 4. Dake keeps coming on. Now, watch. Pawn, queen, rook, 3. And you think, well, yeah, it's on the side. It is putting the emphasis against the bishop because this diagonal is so strong. And this forces the exchange of the knights. You've heard me say it before. When usually as a pattern that we can notice and pretty much have confidence in our own games, when you do that bishop pin against either a king of the knight, or if you're on this side and you do the knight pin against the queen, if and when the pin either gets refuted or they castle or whatever, take the knight. Don't retreat the bishop. That loses a move. Go ahead and exchange. And I know there's some who say, oh, no. No, I do not want to change my bishops for knights. And yes, it depends on the board positions, but this is what's mostly done. Pawn takes bishop. So what this does is it brings some strength to that important central pawn. Yes, it also opens up a file for black. You see, there is a file opened for white. So this is important to keep in mind. Yes? King rook. King 1. No sooner than I spoke than I gave it away. Yes, the king rook to the king rung. Now the knight to the rook 4, challenging that unsupported bishop. Now see, this is vintage Alekhine. It is. He looks for weaknesses in the opponent's camp and he attacks them relentlessly. This bishop has no one to support him. So Alekhine goes after him. And the bishop comes to queen 2. And now rook comes to rook 2 because what he's threatening is the knight is going to take the queen pawn. And it's going to cause all kinds of problems here. So Alekhine bumps up to support his second rank. And Dake pushes his rook up to king 2. And now the bishop bumps down to king 1. And Dake brings his queen rook to king 1. Apparently he did what we're doing. He looked at Alekhine's games and he said, you know, I've seen this guy before put a rook on an open file and then, hark, the herald angels sing. I have seen him do a double rook on a single file. I'll go ahead and try it. Not a bad idea. And now pawn bishop 4. He's trying to get a little bit more room. Alekhine realizes, okay, I'm a little crunched here. I ought to get a little bit more room. And this is to secure a square for his knight at king 5. You can see Alekhine is really supporting that king 5. That would be a great place to put a knight. So this is what Alekhine's thinking here. And where are you? Oh, this one. Knight comes to bishop 3, and knight comes to bishop 3. The knight served his purpose, getting the bishop out, so he comes back because, of course, this, sincerely, is really a lot better than that, right? It just is. So he comes back down to here. Knight bishop 3, knight bishop 3, and now, kapow! Dake says, pay attention, O great master. That's a tough attack. Whoa. The backward pawn, and he attacked it, and he got it. Very interesting. Well, the rook has to take the rook. You can't leave a central file like that unchallenged. There is no way. Nope, it's not going to happen. But now look, rook takes the rook, and Dake not only is controlling the open file, he is controlling the 7th rank, which is really interesting doing this against an Alekhine. Yeah? Pawn comes to bishop 5. Bishop takes the pawn. And let's see, knight. Okay, now Alekhine again puts that powerful knight on the outpost. That is a great move. That gives him really interesting hitting power toward the king side and over here into the queen side. Bishop goes to king 5 on the outpost, challenging one of the big defenders of the king, and this rook is also hitting that square. Just pay attention to the board position and you can see what each player is thinking most of the time. Very handy for us amateurs. True. Alekhine doesn't want to exchange one of the key defenders of his king, so he brings it up to rook 3. And now Dake takes his central knight on the outpost, and the pawn returns, and again a passed pawn, and he's coming to challenge this knight. The knight comes up here to knight 5. Whoops, no, sorry. Pawn took that knight, and now, yes, knight 5. Dake comes up to knight 5, and the queen comes up to bishop 4. Now we're in the tangle. We are in the tangle. This is getting tough. And now what happens? The queen bumps down to knight 3, check. The bishop comes to bishop 2, saying not at this moment. And in fact, that's a good defensive move because now he's hitting the queen. And when you're threatening the queen and you've got an attack, you want to take care of your little lady. So, if you were white, what would you do? And I'm becoming somewhat predictable in my videos because this is a typical amateur type thinking that I have done way too much of, and so I want to share that with you so that maybe you can improve your chess. I think I'm beyond all help, but you guys are not. There's a few good squares the queen could move, but is that the best thing to do? No. Sit on our hands, just like Lasker taught, and find a better move than moving your queen out of danger. The knight simply takes the bishop. Now that is a much finer move. Against Alexander Alekhine, that's a better move. Yeah. Well, the rook takes the knight, and we have a battle. Boy, do we have a battle. The rook will take the rook. Do you see how Alekhine's defensive alignments are getting rid of the attacking pieces? True, as you exchange, Alekhine's definitely being attacked. But as you exchange, you're losing defensive players also. But your opponent is also losing the offensive attack pieces. And this is the strategy Alekhine is working on. Very, very interesting. The queen takes the rook, and there doesn't seem to have a whole lot of attacking pieces left. Dake brings the queen up here to check instead of exchanging off the queens. Check. This means Alekhine goes to here, and he says, just for a moment, you had check, but not right now. Now, Dake pushes the pawn to queen 5. Very interesting move. And Alekhine pushes the pawn to king 6. So we are going to have an end game battle here. Nice. Dake pushes the pawn to bishop 4. And here, Alekhine says, it's time to pull the trigger. Now I will exchange queens. Yes, now is the time to exchange the queen. So the queens come off the board, and Alekhine begins putting his bishop toward the center. And Dake takes the pawn. And Alekhine pushes the king toward the pawns. And Dake brings up another pawn, and Alekhine presses his pawn. And now Dake supports his pawn, and Alekhine takes the bishop pawn, and Dake returns the favor, taking Alekhine's pawn, and the king goes to queen 1. The king is ever getting closer. In an end game, the kings are fighting pieces. Use them. We see Alekhine doing this beautifully. Pawn to queen rook 4. Dake continues pushing pawns. Alekhine continues bringing in his fighting piece. Very important to recognize. Bishop to queen 6. There's no reason to have the bishop taken, of course. Bishop to knight 2, nabbing the gigantic diagonal and getting ready to bring his bishop to where the pawn will queen. King comes to bishop 1, and it's here that the great Alekhine resigned. You don't get to see very many games where Alekhine resigns. But he did here, because it is inevitable what's happening. He is way outgunned. A majority of 4 pawns to 1, and 2 pawns, even though they're not connected to the 1, and bishops on the same color. Fundamentally, white can win this game. So there's your chess game. That's a surprise. We see even the greatest of grandmasters really do lose, and they really are outplayed by really fundamental principles of chess. And this is a beautiful example of that. This is why we begin to have hope, faith, and excitement by reading and studying the Grandmaster games, because we see what we're learning. Even though it's basic, it's general. Yeah, I'm not a grandmaster. No, I don't have any Shurinkakov combination, fancy names for any spectacular, super duper wild moves. It's just basic ABC of chess strategy. It's simple pin tactics, but it works. It works. And that's why it is such a joy to play through the Grandmaster games. The chess authors who advise us to learn from the Grandmaster's games, they're right. And so we continue looking at them. So you guys have a great day. Be good, do well, have fun. Thanks, come again. Happy chessercising, happy checkmating, happy whatever to be happy about, which is pretty much everything. The attitude of gratitude will get you further in life than being miserable and looking back at what has happened in the past and hurt us, because we've all been hurt by the past. So let that go. Let's move forward in the future of joy, success, power. Anyway, that's enough preaching. I will see you guys in the next video. And no, I'm not even bluffing.